everybody, and welcome to my first tutorial on how a Victorian house looks like in The Sims 4 and what are some of the most important things that needs to be known about this era, based on some of the articles I've read and the documentaries I've watched. Here is a sneak peek of the final look of the outside of our house, and next we will move on to the proper build part, where I also share with you quite important and creepy things about the mid to late 19th century. At first, I need to mention the fact that the Victorian is not quite a specific style, but it's the era in which the Queen Victoria of Great Britain lived, between 1837 to 1901. In Great Britain and also in the former British colonies, a Victorian house generally means any house built during the reign of Queen Victoria. Meanwhile, in the United States, Victorian house styles include Second Empire, Queen Anne, Shingle, Richardsonian, Romanesque, and others. The majority of homes built before the Victorian period were owned by the gentry, or at least wealthy landowners, whereas wealth in the Victorian era was spread across society in the wake of the Industrial Revolution, and houses became less grand and more accessible. This meant that it was necessary to build more homes, which is why the Victorian period is characterized by rows of terrace housing on narrow streets. Of course, in this video I won't build a street full of houses which share the side walls, which represents the terrace housing. Firstly, because the game won't let us create near houses built on different lots, and secondly, because today in this video I want to share with you mostly some of the best and important details of a Victorian house and its potential owners. Terrace housing were generally built to accommodate workers moving to cities to work in factories because of the Industrial Revolution, so people flocked to the towns looking for work. The explosion of the property market happened in the Victorian era, so they were forced to mass-produce homes to accommodate all of the workers. So this is why Victorian properties make up such a large proportion of homes in Britain's cities today. The terraces designed to house working families were often very small and built in close proximity to one another. A typical house of this kind was a 2-up, 2-down, meaning 2 rooms upstairs and 2 downstairs. Sometimes a whole street would share just a few toilets. Some families may have had as many as 12 children, which was a source of income at the time, because they could be sent to work, and so space was extremely tight. Despite their compact footprint, Victorian homes are characteristically very well proportioned, making them comfortable living spaces. It is said that they have the best proportioned spaces with high ceilings and great depth. As you may already know, high ceilings and large windows were a feature of Victorian homes, but the rest of the layout became a little bit cramped compared to previous Georgian designs, with a long and thin footprint. Often Victorian homes are 1 room wide, with a narrow hallway leading off into the different entertaining rooms, or 2 up, 2 down, with just 2 rooms on each floor. And there are a lot of vertical details, decorations, mix of material and colors. We have dark furniture and wood floors, fireplaces in every room, patterned wallpaper, which reflected the wealth of the owner and those coming into new money. Speaking into room details, Victorian houses consisted in a small hidden kitchen, because kitchens were considered to be the territory of servants for the wealthy and would certainly not have been on display to the public in smaller houses. Beyond the main house would have been what is called a rear projection or outrigger, which housed the kitchen, pantry, and historically an outside toilet. The only rooms to be presented to the public were the formal reception rooms. That's probably one of the biggest differences between an original Victorian property built in the 19th century and one now. Things like cooking were certainly not something on show to friends and guests. They had no garage because cars were invented towards the end of the Victorian era. So Victorian homes would not have had garages, hence the multitude of properties today with on-street parking. People would have traveled by foot, steam train, horse, and in the case of the wealthy, horse and the cart. Most rooms in a Victorian house would have contained a fireplace, as open fires were the only form of heating. The lack of heating also had an impact on room size, which means open spaces were unrealistic. Also, they had those heavy curtains that would also have in common to block draughts, as windows were single glazed. Speaking of windows, which were very important for the detail, typical Victorian windows were made up of 4 or 6 panes, fixed to wooden runners that slide vertically, which were called sash windows. Often homes would have bay windows, either circular or rectangular. Bay windows are very characteristic of the Victorian era, and they can even go up to 3 stories high. Well, the Victorians embraced ornament in the detail and in the form of their buildings. They would have had bays to create more interest in the modeling. They used rich, dark colors, which were a la mode, as were bottom-backed armchairs, ottomans, and chaiselongs. Often they had ritual colors, and they embraced color much more than we readily give them credit for. Victorian homes indeed became the stereotype for the haunted house, not only for the house look, but mostly for the people traditions and way of living. London became the biggest industrial city in the Western world. Supplying the household with basic foods in the newly expanded city was quite a challenge in the late 19th century. Staples as bread and milk became cheaply available thanks to the Victorians' new technique of food processing. They used the cheapest ingredients for making profit, charging a high price for them, so adulteration became very popular throughout the Victorian period. For people, buying processed food was affordable, as it was also time-saving because they were no longer needed to bake all day long. Here comes the nasty part about food. Things like alum, chalk, iron sulfate, and plaster of Paris, which is commonly used to precast and hold parts of ornamental plasterwork placed on ceilings and corniche. And also, plaster of Paris is used in medicine to make plaster casts to immobilize broken bones while they heal. Well, all these things were used for making the food look more consistent and for a longer period of time. The bread mainly consisted in the adulterant named alum, which today is found in the detergent, but back then it was used for his properties of whitening the bread and also retaining water, so the bread feels more substantial, which could also impress the guests, having the whitest bread in town. In theory, they were not dangerous to health in those quantities, but when the miller adds alum and also the baker adds alum to the bread, it can really affect your bowel system. Chronic gastritis is a problem in the late Victorian England, and that led to chronic diarrhea, which finally led to death. Also, tea was adulterated with everything, from iron fillings to dust to used tea leaves. Green tea had Prussian blue in it, and that's pretty little. Even after it is known, people just simply don't know what adulterated food looks like versus non-adulterated food, so they were left with no choice. Milk, an important and cheap source of calcium, was also adulterated. The principal constituent is boracic acid. Most of the milk that came to London was treated in this way. The boracic acid was a component of a product called borax, an alkali used during the Victorian period to prolong the life of milk. Nowadays, borax or sodium borate is used as an all-purpose cleaner. Outdoor furniture, toilet bowls, floor, everything. Well, it is obvious that the use of borax in food was not quite healthy, as it led to stomach problems when ingested and other organs problems in a bigger amount. Moreover, it led to tuberculosis, as borax itself cannot kill the bovine TB bacterium that grows in the milk as it sours. You can tell it was not the best period to be healthy or to be in shape. Moving to another important topic, let's talk about the wallpaper. The wallpaper in the Victorian period indicated both good taste and status. The richer the pattern, the better. The green color gave a great impression, and it was used in everything: carpets, candles, children's toys, and most of it was used in wallpaper. But as the sales of wallpaper escalated, so did the unexplained deaths and illnesses in the home. The green color consisted in arsenic, which inhaled, not even swallowed, could cause bad symptoms similar to cholera, agonizing abdominal pain, as the whole digestive tract is affected by the arsenic, which led to death. Everything that was colored or pigmented would have had high levels of a toxic metal in it, and even if it was white, it wasn't safe, as large levels of lead were in that color. This metal is very dangerous, and I guess it's obvious that no amount of it is safe for the body. Children, for example, were in danger for playing with lead-layered toys, as they have the habit of licking and putting things in their mouth. Unlike other poisons which have an unpleasant taste, lead is not unpleasant, so it's obvious that the child could not be put off. They used lead because it was, as is it now, the best preserver of food. So the child may not develop normal. They could have attention deficit due to lead poisoning. It could also cause anemia, and people had a grey pallor and bluey-grey lines, which were called Burton's lines at the base of the gums. This was a very characteristic mark that was a sign of lead poisoning. But at the time they found that line, it was probably too late. Even today, some of the old houses contain lead paint and pose as a risk. Well, the government did nothing, even though they knew about all these chemical killers in their objects, wallpaper and food. The Victorian people measured how good their lives were by how many objects they possessed. Color, clutter, and objects represented wealth, and sometimes they could bring death. You know, I said earlier that they were creepy. Well, they really were. But I blame it on the fact that they didn't have enough knowledge of the things they were using. If a dermatologist could hear this, or someone who has a good skincare routine, or someone who knows barely some informations about how the face really needs to be treated like, please don't cry, as what I'm about to say is pretty messed up. There was a beauty routine that included things like ammonia, arsenic, and lead. White skin was all the rage, and women achieved that by washing their faces with ammonia, then covering them with lead-based paint, and in order to keep that fresh-faced look, it was suggested rubbing some opium on before bed. Oh, and there is more. If you were unlucky enough to have thin eyebrows and eyelashes, a nightly smear of mercury could help with that. And speaking of the eyes, watery eyes were all the rage too, for some reason. To achieve that look, women could use lemon juice, perfume, or freaking belladonna as eye drops. Well, the latter did, of course, cause blindness, but who could have guessed? Well, this was the first part of the Victorian house architecture facts and history. Thank you for watching and listening. If you like this video and you are interested in more videos like this, which I'm about to do, don't forget to subscribe. Also, if you have some suggestions, I will be glad to know about them in the comment section down below. See you in the second part of this project. Have a great day and watch the ingredients in your night cream. Bye bye.